If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hello, Escape Pod peeps. Welcome to the Escape Pod.
Hello.
I'm Julie.
I'm Charity.
And you're joining us in our very cool
Dark
Escape Pod suite that we have darkened today to ease the headache that Charity is experiencing. We're coming to you from the One Heart campus in lovely Rapid City, South Dakota. You can learn more about One Heart on the prologue episode on the Escape Pod, all the things, all the places where it exists.
Yeah.
It's in more places than I can count.
I know. KB is a wizard at that.
Yeah. Very cool. What are you escaping from today?
How long do we have?
I mean, I have like an hour.
Okay. Let's see. We're escaping the heat in Lincoln.
Oh, yeah.
I watched my son graduate, and we didn't get to make it because my mother-in-law, 87-year-old little mommy-in-law, collapsed.
Yeah.
Before the ceremony. So I didn't get to see my son graduate from high school because he graduated in 2020. And so that was destroyed by COVID. And now I didn't get to see him graduate from college either, which was a super bummer. So that also freaking insurance.
Right.
Our cyber policy just increased 400% for One Heart.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's not his fault, but the insurance agent came to see me today, and I'm like, how can they justify this? It's based on revenue, not the creation of more risk. So they're just basing it on your revenue. And they're like, oh, well, you guys are doing well, so we're going to jack it up 400%. It's like, I didn't budget for that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just this arbitrary, we think we know what your business model is like. And it's like, anyway, so I hate insurance companies.
Unless you're willing to sponsor us.
Unless you want to sponsor us. Yeah, help offset some of these damn costs. But good Lord.
Oh.
So that's a bummer. And then, of course, headache. I woke up this morning and my whole left side of my neck and shoulder. And I've been having issues with it all of last week, where I think I told you it's almost like a spasm that pulls my head into my shoulders like a turtle. Like maybe I'm mutating. I don't know what's happening. Hurts. And then this morning I couldn't move my shoulder at all. And so anyway.
I definitely, I am at that point in life where like sleeping hard will lead to like, oh, I have a kink in my neck. Oh, I have a kink in my shoulder. Oh, now I have a headache.
Oh, you want to hear a funny
away.
theory on that? Okay. He won't care. Former police chief turned former mayor. He's quirky. This is former Mayor Steve Allender.
Concur.
And he has the funniest theories on things.
Okay.
So his theory on why we have more aches and pains as we grow older is because we're getting closer to death. So every time we sleep, our body thinks we're dying, and then we wake up and we're a little bit closer. I mean, it's just hilarious. And I'm like, well, today I kind of feel like he has some validity to this theory, but
I'm not sure he's wrong.
I'm not sure he's wrong, but
actually a good friend of mine who recently passed away just this spring, and she was older. She was, I think, over 90. But I remember several years ago, even her saying, and she was pretty good until the last few years, but her commenting that, eternal rest really sounds better all the time.
Right?
I was kind of like, at the time I was like, really? But now I'm only, I hope, like halfway there. And I already kind of feel like I know what she's talking about.
I know.
Yeah.
No, I can't say that hasn't crossed
your mind.
Lately.
But that's a funny
just like the state of the world and all of the unrest and the hatred and all the stuff. And I'm just like, I don't know if I can
It's been rough.
Another lifetime. Like, okay, I think when it's time to go, I'm going to be ready to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully, if you're listening, maybe we have a pretty good episode today. So maybe people will get a little bit of an escape from just the day-to-day hard things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these people all escaped some really hard things by using this hardwired response we talk about a lot in our guests with that crisis brain, fight, flight, freeze, appease. All of these little stories today, a couple short ones and one a little bit longer, but still not like a full length, all escaped their situations by playing dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So have you played dead before? Have you had to play dead before?
Fortunately, no. But I am aware, I mean, in some of the news stories, you know, that we've heard about. And I feel like I read a true story experience from like a Holocaust survivor where that's essentially how he escaped, was by playing dead.
Yeah.
So I've heard, you know, several stories over the years, but fortunately, no. Ugh,
Well, I can tell you,
freaks me out.
I'm guessing because of my tendency now as like a teenager and then an adult to, I mean, you know me, I grew up fighting. I mean, a lot of physical altercations. Most I did not start, but I knew how to protect myself. Just a temper and a mouth that would lead to, it's some things. But I have this, what would make me so frustrated about anything that was like a sexual attack in nature is that's when I would freeze. And that's when I'd want to fight. It was like I didn't want to be in a fist fight, and I'm finding myself fighting people. And it's like, those are the ones I don't want to do. And then when someone is, you know, doing inappropriate things to me, that's when I can't fight. And, you know, I had a therapist tell me that that's actually, again, a survival mechanism. And most women who don't fight actually survive. So it brings me some sense of peace, I guess. But one thing I remembered while I was going through this, I think I was about 14 years old, 13, 14. It was in junior high school. And one of my good friends had an older sister, much older sister, and she hung around with airmen from the base. And so, like, if I did a sleepover with her, you know, we were always hanging out, going cruising with her sister and these older guys. And there was this house we would stay at. So one night, you know, my parents think I'm staying the night at Deanna's house, and we're actually with her sister and these men. And Deanna and I, you know, again, we were partiers, but nothing inappropriate then. So we drank ourselves out of partying, went into a bedroom, closed the door, and she and I were in a bed together sleeping. She was passed out. I was trying to sleep. And the guy who was the boyfriend of the sister came into that room. He crawled into bed. And it's just so absolutely disgusting. But I remember I could not move. Next thing I know, his hands are down inside my underwear. And I'm just like, and I can't scream, like my voice, nothing would work. Nothing would work. And there's someone in the bed that theoretically could have helped me. And I just couldn't. So that sense of survival, I can't believe this still impacts me after all these freaking years. But that sense of survival is like so hardwired. And you never know you think you might know what you're going to do in those situations, but you don't know until you're in them. And, you know, that's why when my daughter was, I think, 18, senior in high school, and she started dating an airman. It's kind of a funny story. So I'm going to go down a rabbit hole for a minute. So my daughter is an amazing young woman. She's 28 at this time, so this was many years ago. And she only went through a couple of beetle-headed moments as a teenager. Generally, she was just very good, very, you know, self-aware and independent. But she did date this little idiot. And it was just one little short phase, right? So she brings this guy home. My husband's parents, who are much older than my parents, like 20 years older than my parents, we're visiting for the holidays. He comes over, and we were big into family game night. So it's like, well, let's get to know this kid. We can bring him to family game night and kind of see what happens. And then the next thing I know, he's dropping an F-bomb at my kitchen table in front of my parents-in-law. And he's directly across the table from me. And I just looked at him and I said, excuse me?
Right.
Not that I don't swear, because we all know I do. But
you read the room?
I don't do it in front of my in-laws. And it was incredibly inappropriate. And the room just went silent and cold. And pretty soon, we just stopped the game. Sierra's like trying to get him out of the house. And I'm in my bedroom with my mother-in-law going, oh my God, what do I do? Because like all I had was my experience to go after. She's my only daughter and my first child. And so I'm like, if I push her and make a scene, is she gonna really want to hang out with this little idiot? Or, you know, what? So I didn't do really anything. Sierra read the room, got him the hell out of there. And then a couple weeks later, Sierra comes to me. She goes, well, I think I got to break up with this guy. And I'm like, yes, hallelujah.
Yeah.
And I go, oh, really? Why? And she says, well, because he texted me and asked me to have sex with him. And that's just really lame and like not cool. And I'm like, cool, you got boundaries, girl? Go tell him. So she broke up with him. And after she did, then I let her have it. Like, oh my God, I was freaking out that, God, I didn't want this guy as a son-in-law. Like, and she's like, whoa, pump the brakes. And then she said, well, Mom, listen, I really trust your judgment. So next time you feel that strongly about a guy, you get my permission to play the mom card and I will listen to you. I said, cool, challenge accepted. So while later, we're at the dinner table again. And she's blushing. She's got her cell phone at the table. She's going to be so mad at me. I'm telling this straight, everybody. Anyway, she can't hide anything. Her face tells all. And so I'm like, so Sierra, who are you texting over there? Oh, it's this boy. And she names him. And I'm like, oh, what grade's he in? He's not in a grade. And I'm like, what do you mean he's not in a grade? Is he a dropout? Like, what's going on? And she's like, no, he's in the Air Force. And I went, wham! And I slapped the table. I said, mom card. Right now. And she's like, what? You haven't even met him. And I'm like, I didn't tell her about the abuse. So I played my mom card and she's like, okay. I mean, that's what I said. Well, a couple months later, she comes to me and she's kind of hemming and hawing around. And I'm like, oh, shit. She's got something to tell me. And she's like, okay, you know, when I said that I'd break up with them, I didn't. And I'm like, okay. Shoot. Well, I really want you to meet him. Like, all right, I don't know if we're going to get to that point. But so Tim and I did an intervention with her, took her offsite. And Tim did all the stalking of him, like cyber stalking, to kind of see what this guy was like on Facebook and like his maturity level and, you know, that kind of thing. He's really into his car, which is never a good sign because the abuser I had was always into his car. And so I just said, look, you know, in my experience, you have these young men who now, you know, they leave high school, they go into the military, and they have a tremendous amount of responsibility that they are not mature enough to handle. And so the most secure they ever were was in high school. That was the glory day, the heyday, and that's where their security blanket is. So this is why they want a high school girlfriend. And I told her, I said, they're going to want to own you very quickly, propose marriage, do something to claim you, jewelry, ring, whatever. And she is turning green. And this is just my profiling, right? Like, here's my analysis based on my experiences and what I've seen.
Yeah.
She's turning green. And I said, you know what, sweetie, I can tell this is ringing true to you. She goes, well, he gave me a ring. And I'm like, can I see it? She goes, well, I don't have it with me, but it's his high school ring. And I said, see, do you see what I'm talking about? And I mean, I couldn't have written it any better, right? Mm-hmm. And she's like, yeah, I do. Do you want me to break up with him? I said, no, I'm not going to tell you to break up with him. That's a decision you need to make. You know, you're 18. And then that's the other thing. She kept saying, well, we're both adults. And I said, okay, yeah, that's true. I said, but, you know, in college, I was approached by a professor. She goes, ew. I said, we were both adults.
Yeah.
She goes, but it was inappropriate. I said, yes, you have someone who is in the military in a working capacity as an adult trying to date a high school child.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not okay. So ultimately, she did the right thing, and she broke up with this young man. And he was fine. He just,
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was my rabbit hole for the day.
Well, I'm pleased to say one of my former coworkers ended up marrying an airman and still married, wonderful relationship. And so my experience with a lot of the guys from our area Air Force Base was in more my like early to mid 20s. And
Totally
they
different.
were kind of awesome.
Yeah.
Like it was fun. I didn't know any of them super well, but and they were a little bit older at the time, even having met them. Yep. So they weren't still teenagers themselves or even 20. I mean, they're probably between 25 and 30 at that point.
There's a lot of maturing that happens between like 18 and 25.
For sure.
Even, my son is 22, almost 23 now. And
right.
The difference between him at 18 versus now is just
dramatic,
night and day. So yeah,
for sure. Well, that's anyway. Well, that's a sad story for you, but provided some good advice for your daughter as far as watching for some signs of maybe what you're just not ready for.
And that's just one of the cases that I remember about playing dead. I just couldn't move. Like if I just pretend I'm asleep, maybe he'll just finish what he's doing and go away, and ultimately he did. But I mean, it seemed like an eternity that this was happening. It was just really horrific.
I think too, that's a super important lesson for just all our listeners, regardless of what kind of job you're in, that when people say, I couldn't move or I didn't know.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Right? Because people do, I think the tendency is to say, like, did you fight back? Did you say anything? Did you? And
or
it's
why
like,
didn't you?
Or why didn't you?
Yeah.
And it's really unfair, Yeah. Ugh. So tell us some of these other stories about people who used playing dead to become escape artists themselves.
Well, I have 3 little stories for you today. This first one is about a 10-year-old boy playing dead.
Okay.
And this happened in April, like very recently.
Oh, wow.
Sheffield, Alabama. A 10-year-old boy who was required to share time between parents. So his parents were separated. He underwent a horrific ordeal at the hands of his mother. So according to the young boy, he'd been enduring some pretty serious abuse at the hands of his mother for about a week. Like something had set her off and he was taking the brunt of whatever she was going through. And the abuse allegedly included like hitting him and biting him. And there were visible scrapes and bruises on his body, according to court affidavits, all of which the boy claims were caused by his mother. There was no change in this story ever.
Okay.
And he told his father, understandably, that he wanted to come live with him full time because, and there was a court order mandating joint custody. So the father didn't really know or feel like he had any legal standing to grant his son's request. Okay. But he heard him. He just didn't know how to maybe navigate that. So mom's name is Ashley Jones, 34-year-old. When he tells his mother that he wants to go live with his dad. So he'd already told his dad this. When he tells his mom, I want to go live with dad, she loses it. I don't know if it was a case of grabbing whatever was nearest or just being really methodical, but she doused him with bleach. Oh. I don't understand it at all. Again, if it was just opportunity, it was there, or if she thought she could cleanse these thoughts out of his little head or whatever. Mm-hmm. But panicked, understandably, this kiddo runs to the bathroom to wash off the bleach in the bathtub. She follows him into the bathroom. Now there's water in the tub filling up. She grabs his face and shoves it underwater for about 45 seconds, according to him. I know sense of time and all of that is really distorted when we're undergoing serious things. But according to this young boy, she attempted to drown him in the bathtub. So his amygdala kicked in and it triggered the freeze response. And he, like, if I just play dead, she'll stop. Mm-hmm. This is what he did. And he believes that that's what saved his life. So after the incident, mom locked him in a closet for a few hours, according to court documents. And when the boy's father came to pick him up at the next scheduled appointment, like the little guy runs out to meet him carrying nothing but his clothes and his Xbox. Like he took the important things and was like fleeing. And that's when the boy told his father about the abuse, and dad finally got authorities involved.
Okay.
So Ashley got brought in for questioning the next day. She was arrested. She was released on a $50,000 bond. Just a few days ago, May 18th, I think, she was indicted and then is planned to be in court again on June 18th. So it looks like they're going pretty quickly with this one. But again, this little 10-year-old, you know, and it's not something you learn. I mean, sometimes you do through movies or whatever, you know, but it is really a hardwired response. And he knew consciously, if I play dead, I can maybe get out of this. And it worked. Yeah. But I do want to say, if you suspect child abuse, call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-4A-CHILD or 1-800-422-4453. Or you can go to www.childhelp.org. And all of these calls are toll-free and confidential, and it's available 24/7 in many, many, many languages. So if you're hearing this and you suspect it, call. It is better to ask these questions and look into something and have it be nothing than be suspicious and not say anything. And, you know, this child very easily could have lost his life during this situation if what he alleges is actually what happened.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy. Okay, what's our next one?
Next one is about a badass shop owner by the name of Vicky Webb, who played dead to escape what we learn is a serial killer.
Oh, my. So
this was a little ways ago. So January of 1994, before I was a mother. A gift
No
shop.
comment.
Oh boy, that caught me off guard. A gift shop owner by the name of Vicky Webb was like super excited. She was getting ready to go on a big vacation later that afternoon, just wanted to get through her work duties, you know, like that anticipation feeling that you feel. And this guy just walks in, rather unextraordinary, unremarkable, skinny, lanky dude, walks into the store, starts looking around, and he's just engaging her a lot, like asking her a lot of questions about her shop and the surrounding neighborhood, like traffic patterns. And she's just like, okay, you know, not thinking too much of it. I think one interview I saw, she thought maybe he was like scouting for real estate or looking to see if where he put a storefront would be, you know. So there was questions like that.
But she was justifying it.
Yeah.
Kind of oddities in her head.
But she was very observant, which ended up being super helpful later on. So she just later describes the man to law enforcement as possibly mid-30s, very slender on the shorter side, kind of tanned and leathery skin, if maybe like he was an outdoor worker for most of his working life. Brown hair, brown eyes, bow-legged. She even described his jeans and a very specific type of cowboy boot that he was wearing. So he looks around, asks a ton of questions, and then he leaves. That's it. And I mean, people do that. They come in, they just, you know, some people are really conversational. Whatever, he leaves. So he comes back a little bit later. He talks to Vicky some more, saying that he's waiting for his niece to join him because his niece would really enjoy Vicky's store, according to this guy. So he's there another 15 to 20 minutes, talking her up. And the good thing about it, not what is to come, but she was able to give law enforcement a lot of detail that they would end up finding useful later. He sees his picture frame. He expresses an interest in. And so he asks about it. Vicky turns to like look up something for him. And as soon as she turns her back, the store is empty otherwise, she hears a loud bang. She doesn't understand what it is yet. And she falls to the ground. And she said later that it felt like it was all in slow motion. And she just remembers thinking like, I don't want to die. I have a 13-year-old daughter at home. Like, please don't let me die. She hits the floor, landing on her right side, and starts to realize she'd been shot. And so the shooter, this guy, jumps over her, proceeds to take all the cash out of the register. Meanwhile, Vicky, she was fully conscious, but she played dead. Yeah. You know, smartly so. And she said later that she got the idea from old films that she'd watched over the years because she knew that if this guy thought she was alive,
he'd shoot again.
He'd probably finish the job, right? So she played Possum like her life depended on it, because ultimately it did. And she said it was easy to play dead because she could barely breathe. She was actually shot in the neck.
Oh, my.
And so she was struggling to get air in. But she was also completely paralyzed. So that helped her to play dead from the neck down, which ended up in this case being a short-term blessing.
Okay.
Because when he flipped her over, so she's on her right side, he flips her over to face him, drags her behind the counter so she can't be seen from the front of the store, pulls her pants down, and then rather forcefully presses his gun against her forehead and pulled the trigger again. But the gun was evidently out of bullets.
Whoa.
Yeah. And then he just laughed as if he was having the best time of his life. But he thinks she's dead. He was just going to shoot her again. And I don't know if he's going to sexually assault her or what. But she later described his laugh when the gun clicked as vicious, quote, vicious, maniacal, evil, just pure evil. Well, there was a noise. Someone was outside the shop now. He evidently got spooked and he took off. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened to Vicky, or if she could have continued playing dead. Because then again, for some people being sexually assaulted, their response is to fight. And even though she was paralyzed from the neck down, there could have been an expression on her face. There could have been some indication that she was not deceased, right? So after he was gone, she tried to move. She couldn't. She tried to scream but couldn't. She was in a pool of blood, her own blood, for about 15 minutes until some customers came in the shop and found her.
Oh my gosh.
And that was when the pain exploded in her body. It was almost as if her mind was preventing her from feeling that full impact of what had happened until she knew there was a pathway to safety. So people come into the shop, she feels the impact of what happened to her. She's rushed to the hospital. Doctors told her she needed surgery, but would likely be on a respirator for the rest of her life because of where the bullet hit her. And she would also lose the use of her right arm. And so she said, nah, I'm good. She refused the procedure. She just had a knowing that while it might be a long road ahead, she was going to be okay. And so she was bedridden for over 2 months. She had to learn how to walk again, all with this bullet lodged in her neck vertebrae. And she said her head was hypersensitive and that she would scream if even a hair on her head was touched. She described the pain like an ice pick with an electric current running through it, which is sometimes how my migraines feel. Months later, she learned from investigators that this shitbag who shot her was the I-70 serial killer, and she was the only known survivor.
Wow.
And he's still unidentified. They don't have him. But he's known to have murdered 8 people along that I-70 corridor in the Midwest in Indiana, Kansas, and Missouri.
Wild.
So after the shooting and rehab, Vicky said that she kind of laid low. She had tried to avoid any publicity. She remarried. She changed her name. She moved out of the state. She would later move multiple times just to make sure he didn't find out she was alive and try to come finish the job. So she's living in fear constantly that he might come back. Years go by and she decided enough was enough, and she now refuses to let her attacker control her life. So she's a true escape artist in more ways than one. And for nearly 2 decades, she says she's lived on some pretty strong muscle relaxers.
Ooh.
She said, daily it feels like somebody's choking me, and that's a feeling that never goes away. Her right arm feels like it's covered with a balloon. There's a hypersensitivity in her neck, which prevents her from wearing like turtlenecks or scarves or jewelry or anything like that. Takes her some time to move. So she definitely has some lingering effects and obviously both physical and probably mental trauma from this ordeal. But she says, if you saw me, you wouldn't even know I had a bullet in my neck. Most people that I know in my life at this time have no idea. This didn't define me. I'm still the same person. Perhaps I enjoy things a little more and take fewer things for granted. I've moved on and I live life to the fullest. I wake up and enjoy every day. And then she later says, you can go through terrible things in life and come out just fine. So she's definitely a true escape artist and inspiration.
That's, indeed she is. That's interesting, the part about, how she didn't really feel the pain till she kind of allowed herself to feel the pain. And I do believe it because I've heard similar stories. So one of the similar stories, this was an Oprah episode years ago. Like I was probably in high school or college when I saw this episode, but she had people who had survived some pretty horrific things on. And one of them was a woman who was the victim of domestic abuse. I think it was a husband or a boyfriend, I can't remember, but he stabbed her like dozens of times trying to kill her. And of course, the obvious question is, did it hurt? What did it feel like? And the woman said it really didn't hurt. What she felt was warm, which was the blood rushing.
Yeah.
Right. And he obviously did not end up killing her. But I just thought it was super, super interesting because you do, I think, fortunately, when you haven't had something so significant physically happen to you, it is hard to kind of imagine. And it's, for me, a little terrifying to think, like, what does that feel like? But I think hearing, like, your husband's story about, like, being shot in the face and, now some of these, it's like thankfully, like, your body does have some unique responses. And in some ways, it's very protective. And it's just so fascinating to me. I think it's super interesting. Okay, story number 3.
Well, also, she referenced my husband. If you're interested in hearing that story, I don't remember the episode number, but it's true crime hits too close to home.
Yeah.
And talking
and it has on there Tim's story.
Law
I think
enforcement
yeah.
Related, shot in the line of duty.
Yeah.
And
live to tell about it. And really, it's just super interesting to hear him talk about, not just escaping the day, but yes, your life's changed, but in a lot of ways they didn't, and you should, if you haven't listened yet, definitely go back and listen to that one.
Okay, and story number 3, this one is a 11-year-old little girl, and this was the Uvalde school massacre.
Okay.
So
in Texas a couple of years ago.
Yep. So most of us have heard about that school massacre. This was May of 22, so just a couple of years ago, where Salvador Ramos killed 19 students and 2 teachers. But I had not heard about 11-year-old, her name is Maya Cerrillo, and how she survived. And she recounts this ordeal. She said that her class was watching a Disney movie that day because they were finished with lessons. And that was when the 2 teachers in her classroom were notified that there was a shooter in the school. One teacher moved to lock the door, but the little girl says the shooter was already there and proceeds to shoot the glass out of the door. So the teacher's backing away. Ramos follows her into the classroom, makes eye contact with one of the teachers, said goodnight, and shot her. And then he opened fire on the students and the other teacher. People were getting killed all around her. So 11-year-old Maya smeared herself in her friend's blood and played dead in the hopes that he would think he'd already taken her life. 11 years old having to make that decision. So as soon as it was safe to do so, she grabs one of her teacher's cell phones and she called 911. And she said it felt like 3 hours that she lay there in her classmates' blood with her friends. Her mom now says that her daughter is obviously completely traumatized, can't sleep. They've started a GoFundMe to pay for her therapy. So if you're interested in that, go look for Maya, M-I-A-H, Cerrillo, Cerillo, through GoFundMe to help pay for her therapy. She's also startled by loud noises due to the proximity of the gun blasts. And she's also now afraid of men.
Oh. Shoot.
So this guy didn't take her life, but pretty much destroyed her life.
Right.
And so many other people. And then I think about like the summit we had a couple of weeks ago where we had one of our guests on a panel talking about how she's so grateful for, I can't even talk today, but so grateful for this campus that our staff and the other male guests we have here have been able to teach her and her kids that some men can be safe. That so it's just, unfortunately, this little girl may not ever have that opportunity to. So she survived by playing dead. So, good for her to think about doing that with quick thinking instead of like getting caught in the, oh my God, can I do this? She did it and she survived, but man,
I don't think we ever really know how we would react.
No.
Do we?
No.
And I'm not just saying like what I would have done if I were a child. Sometimes I think children maybe are better equipped because they, like, anything is possible to them, right? At that point. I think sometimes they're more creative. I think sometimes there's as much fear. There's also less fear because they might not realize completely what's going on. It's just very interesting how people do different things in different situations. And as you mentioned, like her quick thinking ultimately saved her life. And hopefully, we've had people experience some pretty horrendous things here on this campus. And sometimes it takes a long, long time, but they do when they seek out help, and sometimes they try different things. They might hit on the thing with her that does help someday, that does allow her to sleep, that does allow her to trust people again. She's still pretty little, and it's not that far removed. I mean, 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, for a tragedy like that.
She's 13 now.
Yep. Oh. One of my sister's kids was in kindergarten when the mass shooting happened at the elementary school in Connecticut.
Yeah.
And I think she struggled for a while to even drop her kid off at school.
Oh, sure.
She did it, but she didn't want to. It just, those stories have such a huge effect as a parent. And
well, we talked about Teresa's son's episode, and
okay, that's another one, folks. You have to go back, and it's called Mom's Always Right, because she was she was right. She has a pretty good story to tell too. So, all right. I had the heebie-jeebies for like the last 20 minutes because of those stories. It's okay. They're all survivors. They're all escape artists. And
it's just still horrific that
it is.
People have to suffer the worst of humanity every single day. It just really sucks.
Indeed.
It sucks. So we're just hoping
that's the nice way to put it. It sucks.
It sucks. It just sucks.
Let's take a break. We'll be right back on the Escape Pod. Hello, escape artists out there. Quick public service announcement. You hear us talk on the Escape Pod about the One Heart campus. To learn more about this place for hope and healing where lives are changed for the better, listen to the prologue episode at escapepod.live or wherever you get your podcasts, or visit oneheartrc.org. Welcome back to the Escape Pod, everybody. I'm Julie here with Charity, and we are about to wrap up this edition of the Escape Pod. We heard some pretty interesting stories of people who managed to escape, very horrific situations because they played dead. And
now we just hope they can escape the trauma.
Right. We never know what we might do in situations like that. At least most of us don't. But maybe you have a story of having escaped something in a really strange way or by playing dead. And if so, we definitely want to hear from you. Before we tell you all the ways to get in touch with us, Charity, do you have a place you want to actually escape to in the coming days?
Well, it's not a place. One of my close friends is out of the country right now. And so I tonight get her dog. My favorite dog is a Great Dane. And so this is a Great Dane boxer mix. So he's not quite as tall as a purebred Great Dane. He's still a big boy, and he's just one of my little favorite dogs. Not little, he's not little at all, but just favorite dogs. And so he gets to come live with me for a few days.
That's fun.
So I'm super excited. He'll be at work with me tomorrow, by the way.
Oh, so I'll get to meet him.
You haven't met him?
I don't think so.
He's super cute.
No, I've only met the dog that is like blind and deaf.
Oh, my daughter's blind dog. He's not deaf. He's just blind.
Okay.
Yeah.
And has anxiety issues.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I've met that dog.
He's got a lot of issues, but he's so sweet. Anyway, so yeah.
I think I am escaping to being a parent of just one for a week. One of my kiddos is headed off on a trip in a few days, and so it'll be like a full week of just being a mom of one again, which hasn't been the case for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't want to get rid of the one child. However, logistically, trying to figure out what to do with only one child is easier.
Oh, yeah.
And there will be zero brotherly fighting
just wait,
for 1 week.
The moment your oldest gets to drive himself,
they'll be friends again?
Well, no, you're going to feel like, oh my gosh, this is
freedom.
And then when they both drive and you no longer have to like cart kids around.
That's what everybody says. It's like a new level.
Now getting, especially with boys, them to the point of being able to drive, that's a whole nother story. We probably don't have time for today, but one day.
And then I'm like, but then it comes with all the worries of a teen driver.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But which still, I watched my
you know how
friend.
hard it is, though, to like balance out all their activities and all this stuff. And you as a mom don't have a life because you are the life support and the transporter and all the stuff. And it's just so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a very engaged husband. Like, I only feel like a single parent when he's
on
duty. And I really am kind of a single parent, you know, barring a major emergency. He doesn't get to go away, you know, walk away from his job for lunch or dinner or anything. Right. So, yeah, but that's, and I will escape the fighting for a week because they won't be together.
Nice.
Sometimes I will say they get along so well. I think an angel has gotten its wings. I'm like, wait, how is this happening? And I did, hopefully they don't listen to the Escape Pod till they're older. The other night, they would not stop talking. They share a room. They would not stop talking. And there were giggles and there was laughing and I was like, I want to go yell at them to go to sleep for the third time, but I'm not. They'll just have to be tired in the morning. I was like, I am not getting up. And they're not fighting.
Bonding, yeah.
They were having fun. Yeah. And I'm like, this is the last week of school. Life goes on. Like, they'll just be tired in the morning and
encourage that. Just I think about, like, you know, my sister and I are 4 years apart. She's younger, and we've never been close. And it's probably because of the dumbasses that raised us or didn't raise us, neglected to raise us, however you want to look at that. And so, you know, we're just away from my son's college graduation, undergrad, and my little mommy-in-law was just grinning and giggling at watching the interaction. Not only are the four of us very close, like my two kids and my husband and I, but the kids are best friends. And they're 6 years apart, opposite, you know, genders, one male, one female. And they're just absolutely the best friends ever. And I just love it because my family life did not afford me that opportunity, you know, even like hugging. My daughter's a big hugger. And of course, when she was a young child, I hugged her all the time. But as she grew up, I did less and less of that. And then one day, because she'll come to my house and she's like, okay, Mom, I'm going to hug you. And I'm like, all right.
Really?
Yeah. And then I realized where that came from.
Because your mom didn't hug you?
Nope.
Yeah.
And I'm like, as soon as I realized that, I stopped doing it.
Yeah.
I stopped being uncomfortable with it. I was like, God damn, she's the gift that keeps on giving, that woman. So anyway.
We're huggers.
See, it's good because you all love each other. That's awesome.
We do. Some say it more, but I used to always say, well, I've talked about this before, like my dad doesn't say I love you very much, but he does show it. And he's always showed it. Yeah. He worked a lot when I was a kid. So, you know, he wasn't at all the things the way my mom was very present, you know, for my entire life growing up. But yes, definitely showed it. I never questioned ever if I was and
that's why you grew up awesome and not neurotic like me.
Well, you're awesome and neurotic. It doesn't have to be one or the other. All right. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. We could not do this without the support of our listeners.
Oh, you want to take it? I will.
Well, I lost my spot.
Oh, that's okay. Well, you know, we really want to spread this and grow a community. So if you like what you heard, share it with somebody. Just share it with somebody. That is the quickest way to help us kind of gain in the rankings, if you will. We're a 3-person show. We do all the research, the writing, the production, and promoting on our own, which is taking a lot more time than we originally thought it would. But it's worth it. You know, we're getting really good feedback. We're really, really excited about where it's going. But we really want to turn this into maybe like a monthly episode where we tell your stories of escape of anything. Like, you get to pick what that is and the meaning to you. So please send us your stories. You can send those to escapeartists@escapepod.live. Or if you have like a topic suggestion or anything like that, a story that's unfolding that you think our listeners would appreciate, you can reach out at justbecause@escapepod.live. Follow us on our socials. You can find all of the ways to listen to us and communicate with us at our website, escapepod.live.
We are closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable, but how you grapple with it is optional.
So stay resilient
and keep laughing.